Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will get started here with our host, Louis Marion, who runs our Director of Medical Markets and Performance. He will be doing a presentation today for us all. We want to thank you for your interest and your time today in joining the webinar, and we'll be talking to you about the future of cognitive health and human performance and using digital therapeutics to upgrade your practice. So Louis, I would like to pass it over to you.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for everyone in attendance. Pretty excited to get this presentation out to everyone, and thank you to all of our panelists who have agreed to be here and speak on our behalf. So without further ado, I will be taking you through a brief presentation, and hopefully you all come away from this enriched, as they say. Oh, here, just give me one moment. Okay, so NeuroTracker is a tool that you're going to be able to add to your practice, either to advance your offering or to extend client services. So this is a digital therapeutic tool that can expand your users and your business. So we're going to go over some of the concepts today and identify in a practical nature the advantages of this platform and what it will deliver to you and how it can transform your offering and as I mentioned, to enrich your client base and services. A little bit of the background of the science and where we've come from. The father of this technology, as you can see here on the right, is Dr. Jocelyn Faubert. What this technology really came from was an initiative to develop a cognitive tool or a training paradigm that would combat neurodegenerative diseases. So a good example of something that they were looking to combat was the effect of Alzheimer's. Now, this is, as everyone knows, a horrible affliction, and it impairs people in a way that affects everyone around them. So they were trying to figure out a way to stay the effects of these impairments, and they very quickly realized that the technology that they have developed was something that could also be applied to a healthy brain. In fact, a healthy brain is one that receives this technology in a way that grows even better with the results. So it was at that time, as a matter of fact, that Manchester United, the European soccer team, contacted the organization, and they expressed an interest in using the technology in their soccer lab. And it was at this point that the organization became a commercial organization and turned NeuroTracker into a product that could be acquired by professional organizations such as Manchester United and a subsequent amount of others that really have brought us to where we are today. And I'll be sharing with you a client list so you can get an idea of the fields in which we work with, which really are sport and performance, rehabilitation and medical, as well as in the military. And we're always growing into new fields like finance, gaming, education is one that's growing very rapidly. So very keen to share more information with you about that as well. Here are just an example, as I mentioned, of some of our clients and partners. As you can see, in the world of sport, we're very well represented. In the military, where we've seen a great deal of traction, we actually very recently won a contract with the United States Air Force, whereby they needed to get a certain amount of their pilots through a 12-month training program in only about 6 months. So they sent out a bid to a bunch of different organizations, and we were very, very keen to have won that bid. I believe it was 157 other organizations that competed. I may be wrong. You'll have to fact check me on that. But either way, we're very excited to be working with the U.S. Air Force. And as you can see on the bottom, we are working in a rehabilitative and clinical and research capacity with these organizations, these universities like McGill, University of Montreal, etc. So in terms of our science focus and being a research-based organization, you can see here that we've got over 37 published and peer-reviewed studies. We stand behind our science and we like to lead with the research. At the end of the day, what you're looking for here is measurable results for your clients and for your user base. So with 37 published and peer-reviewed studies, we are one of the most, if not the most, validated in our space. And we've got over 45 research papers and projects ongoing at the moment. So, you know, with over 700 centers across the world and millions and millions of sessions logged, we really have established ourselves as a global presence. This is a little bit about the exercise itself. And as you can see here, one of the simpler versions of what it is that we do in terms of the description is being able to enhance awareness and focus. So what you've got here in these slides, A, B, C, D, and E, are basically the steps that you'll take with the exercise itself. Now what you're doing is tracking three dimensional objects in a space, in essentially a virtual cube. I like to refer to this as a game of 3D memory in a simplified manner. The neuroscientists who develop the technology don't like it when I say that, but it is in effect what the technology does. So as you can see in the first slide here, you've got 8 targets floating in a virtual space. These targets will then have a certain amount of them lit up orange with halos around them, as you can see in slide B, and those will be the targets that you'll have to track throughout what is seen in C, which is the movement phase. So in C, the targets will revert back to yellow, as you can see, and then they'll begin to move. What you were supposed to have done is maintained a gaze or a focus on the targets that had initially been highlighted orange. And then you're going to have to re-identify those targets once the movement phase has ended. Now the balls in the spheres in the slide D will be indexed, numbers 1 through 8, so that you're actually able to identify using a keypad or a touchpad the targets that you have been tracking. Based on how your answers are put into the system, the software itself using a proprietary adaptive staircase will either speed up or slow down. And that's an AI-driven program that adapts to the user and forces them to be at a threshold of difficulty that's just above where they're comfortable. And that's in an effort to keep them training. There's no use in doing an exercise if it's too easy, but also, or conversely, if it's too difficult, they also won't really see the results that they're after. So this proprietary adaptive staircase is actually incredibly useful when it comes to keeping people in the right zone for improvement. So here's just a quick example of one of the speed thresholds that we've got on the software itself. Now this is supposed to start moving in just a second, so you can get an idea of what 1.0 is like. Try to keep your eye on the 4 targets that were initially highlighted. Okay, so if you had to throw out a guess, I mean, I've seen this slide before, so I know that it's 1, 5, 6, and 8. There it is. And if I had gotten all of those correct, the speed of the overall exercise would have sped up for my next session. And it goes on as such in tandem with that staircase. So here's another example of speed 3.0. For most of you, this is going to be very difficult to track, and I encourage you to try it again. But the point of showcasing this difference is that everybody does improve on the software. So moving from speed 1.0 to 3.0, although is seemingly very difficult, it is absolutely attainable for almost any of our users. So here is a look at 3.0. As you can see, that was much more difficult. The balls are moving very quickly. But this is really just to showcase that people do improve on the task. Almost everybody that uses NeuroTracker improves on NeuroTracker. So this is a measurable and attainable speed threshold for most of our users. This slide is going to showcase a little bit about who's using our technology. So you've got naturopaths, natural doctors, osteopaths, chiropractors, physiotherapists, sports vision therapists, trainers, neurologists, optometric doctors. And that's because our technology has been designed to integrate easily with complementary technologies and training. So neurofeedback, measurement of response time, sensory assessment, and biometrics are all things that can be built into tandem with our technology. And the active rehabilitation that we do leads to ongoing performance improvement. And what's important to note here is that you do have to continue to use the training. Some people ask the question of whether or not you can run a couple of sessions and be cured quickly. And the answer is no. Much like anything else, you do have to continue training to feel the results. But this is something that is universally accessible and a training that can be adapted to each individual's needs. So whether you're recovering from a TBI or concussion, or you have performance goals associated with professional sports, it does not really matter. The context of the exercise is non-specific, so we're able to tailor it to whoever it is that is using the software. For learning and active aging, where we're seeing a lot of traction, what you're able to do is improve awareness, focus, and impulse control, improvements to things like working memory and decision making, and the ability to increase the processing speed at which information is taken in by an individual using the software. So In terms of awareness and focus, there are people that are afflicted with MCI, ADHD, autism, and learning deficits. These are obviously areas where we want to improve, and NeuroTracker is giving people the ability to do that. In fact, and I'll have to be fact checked on this one as well, and I'm not sure if it's anecdotal or we actually have a published paper, but NeuroTracker has been shown to elicit the same neurochemical changes in the brain that Ritalin does, without any pharmacological intervention, which is a fantastic sort of benefit to the training, especially when people tend to be over-medicating these days. So definitely something to look me up on so I can forward to you the relevant information as it pertains to that. For performance and athletics, there really is a multitude of things that you can do with the technology. Performance enhancement really is at the forefront of what we're doing. We really are enhancing humans. So enhancing human performance through cognitive training. This is, coming down to giving a baseball player, in this example, the ability to hit a ball better. Those pitches come in at 105 and 6 miles an hour. They think they have something like a third of a second to assess whether or not it's a fastball, a slider, or a curveball, or what have you. Giving them the added edge to be able to make contact or make good decisions under pressure is a phenomenal advantage, and it really is giving athletes an edge who are using the software. In terms of assessment and measuring cognitive performance, this is another incredible tool that NeuroTracker can be used for. So what you can do is measure an athlete's potential by effectively taking a cognitive baseline for them using the system. And what we did in one of our research papers is something at the University of Central Florida with the Orlando Magic, whereby we tracked 12 athletes over the course of an entire season after they had performed just one NeuroTracker session. And what we did find was a very positive correlation between people who had scored well on the software and their performance metrics over the course of the season. And this was based off of things like pass to steal ratios and turnover to assist ratios, all sorts of things that are difficult to grab in maybe just one practice. And these things are indicative of a high performer or a high sport IQ. People like Steph Curry or Lionel Messi who don't fit the physical build of someone you would expect to be, a #1 candidate, but clearly they have something going on cognitively that is earmarked as very important for the sport. So this is a great way to measure those sorts of things. And the third and also very relevant sort of piece of the pie is recovery. So not only are you able to assess injury and improve recovery processes, but return to play readiness is something that we do a lot of work with as well. So what you'd like to do in terms of being able to assess injury is take an initial score, the same way that you would be doing it for an assessment for an athlete, and make sure that they're healthy, they haven't been concussed or suffered any form of TBI, and get an idea of where their baseline is when they're healthy and happy and ready to go. Then after they've had their injury, you put them back on the system, and if their score doesn't sync up to their original healthy score, you've got an additive measure or an additional metric that indicates perhaps this player isn't ready. And with concussions, as I'm sure many of you who work with that or work with those fields are aware of, a lot of the time a player will be asymptomatic and keen to get back out there, especially the younger players. And that's when an additional concussion can happen because they're really not ready to be back out there. And those kinds of concussions really do sideline careers. So you want to be able to monitor that and track that and have as much information as possible about whether or not that athlete is ready to go. And in terms of recovery, what we have found is that NeuroTracker is able to aid in the recovery of TBI and concussion. However, there is more to come on that. We are in the stages of FDA approval for concussion recovery and TBI. So we have to be careful in what it is that we say, but our third-party partners who work with that software and that aspect of the business are going to be able to share a great deal about their exposure to it. And it really is fantastic what we've been able to do. So this is a little bit more about some of the elite training that we've done. So in terms of the military work, I mentioned that study that we did with the US Air Force and the work that we did in the pilot training next program. We're working with the Canadian Special Forces, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the NL MARSOF, the FBI, Rockwell Collins and Lockheed Martin for simulation training and effectiveness. What you can see over here in this right image is actually a pilot doing NeuroTracker while flying aerial maneuvers. And I encourage all of you to follow up with us about that study. If not, we can forward it to our attendee list. It's an incredible example of dual tasking, whereby you incorporate a context-specific exercise to accompany the NeuroTracker exercise to enhance the transfer. of skills, from the NeuroTracker exercise to the real life exercise that they're trying to improve. So that was actually incredible that these pilots were able to perform aerial maneuvers while doing NeuroTracker. So in terms of understanding how things transfer and how the effects actually work, you do really have to use the software or get an understanding from the research perspective. But basically what you're trying to improve upon are these factors, which are processing speed, response control, sustained attention, selective attention, your neuroplastic response, your divided attention and working memory, which is all tied into executive function. So executive function is really the ability to take all of that information together and then make a decision that's actionable based on that information. So it really is the final green light on getting your body to make a decision and act upon it. So the way that we improve these facets of cognitive performance really do all tie together. A little bit more about the granular nature of the exercise itself. The sessions have been designed to be as efficient as possible. So they're only 5 to 6 minute training sessions a week. Per day to produce solid results. You want to do maybe 2 to 3 sessions a day, and I'll let our experts talk a little bit more about their exposure to continuity, absolutely. But you can see here Mick Clegg, former strength and conditioning coach of Manchester United, working with Taekwondo champion Aaron Cook, and he's doing an example of dual tasking. So he's got a squat bar atop his head. He's doing some powerlifting while doing the NeuroTracker training, and that's to make it a little bit more contextually relevant for him and seemingly more difficult as you add motor tasks to the cognitive task. So as you can see at the bottom here, there's flexible integration, which we've talked about as well. It's easy to incorporate NeuroTracker into any sort of technology. And here's a testimonial on the side from Mick. He's run over 10,000 NeuroTracker sessions for Manchester United's best pro athletes and world champions. Ronaldo, I believe, was part of the organization when they first reached out to us. Obviously, he's playing for somebody else now, but this is an example of the type of people that we're working with. So transfer and FAR transfer. This is really what it is that you're looking for when you're working with the technology. So if I use NeuroTracker and I improve on the exercise, how is it that I can be sure that I will actually improve in the sport or the goal that I have in mind for my day-to-day? FAR transfer is best showcased by this study here that was published in the Psychology of Sport and Exercise. And this is where we had two control groups and one experimental, whereby one of them was using NeuroTracker, one of them was watching game footage, and the other one, I believe, was just doing a rest and recovery. Now, what we then did after they had been exposed to the software for a long enough time was have coaches evaluate their performance who were blind to who was in which group. And what we noticed across the board was about a 10 to 15% increase in things like decision-making and pass accuracy for the group that actually was using NeuroTracker, which is a phenomenal sort of level of improvement. And I encourage you as well to ask us for that study, and we'll forward it off to all interested parties. Down on the right here, there's another testimonial about applying NeuroTracker for training in the NBA, the NFL, and the MLS, and the MLB. Once athletes start to really get an appetite for this thing, there's only so much that they can do without jumping on to the program immediately. So one of the biggest testimonials that we can hear from clients is, look, I can't live without this. And that's coming from clients who work with Dr. Keith Smithson, who will be making a presentation later on. For assessment, we did speak about this a little bit already. So really, it's about profiling, return to play indication, and injury risk and prevention. So you want to be able to identify when somebody is not ready to get back out there. So I did cover that already. Injury prevention is something that's obviously very important. You really want to get into the reads about what it is that makes the difference, and that's collision avoidance and biological motion perception. So being able to see, as you can see on the right here, we've got some stick figure examples, being able to see how things move in a dynamic environment and anticipate them is something that athletes do very, very well, but something that everybody could use a little bit more help with. A great example is a quarterback. Take Matt Ryan, for example, who's a big proponent of our software. If you have a wide receiver running down full speed the right-hand side of a football field, all while a 275-pound linebacker is trying to take you out from the left-hand side, you do need a great deal of peripheral awareness and what is essentially the ability to process biological motion. So obviously very relevant for contact sports, and relevant for anything really in terms of cognitive performance. It could even just be driving on the road. The more perceptive ability that you have, the more you're going to be able to function well and confidently as you navigate the world. For concussion and stroke rehabilitation, this is a quote from Dr. Michael Matter, who works in Switzerland, I believe, at the Geneva Medical Doctor Association. He was working with hockey players who weren't able to get onto the ice for about 5 or 6 months, no return to play, and in only about 5 to 6 weeks, they were able to get back on after using NeuroTracker for that time. So in only about 6 weeks, they were getting back out there, which is fantastic, not only for the players, but for the industry as a whole, in that we have this tool to rehabilitate people, as well as a tool that will help them to avoid getting injured in the first place. So this is a great integrative result, and Dr. Matter really is at the forefront of his field for sports vision in terms of assessing these sorts of return to play readiness fields. A little bit more about the program itself. It is incredibly scalable from a remote perspective. You're able to invite users or clients to the program just in seconds. What they do is get an email invitation sent to them, and they're prompted to go in and sign up, entering in standard credentials like name and password. A user can sign up and start his first 6-minute session seamlessly. So your ability to extend your client services is quite easy with this online system that we have. And you're also given a great, what we call coaches or clinicians dashboard that you can see in point 3 here, where you're able to monitor their progress. And this is very important because when you're working with a client remotely, engagement is very important. So being able to monitor them and compose messages to them and keep them up to date on their progress is absolutely paramount. So in terms of consolidation, there are always different forms that it can take, but what you want to do is progress your clients through things slowly. So at the outset, what you would like to do is have them started seated. Even moving from seated to standing engages the motor cortex and makes the task more difficult. But as you begin to integrate more complex tasks, you do create an atmosphere of greater transfer. So the more context-specific dual tasking you create, as you can see as an example here with Aaron Cook lifting the weights or the basketball player here, the more benefit we do see in terms of overall transfer. And what you can see in that third slide here actually is a NeuroTracker tactical awareness, which is where we impose either an image or a video behind the task itself. So that's sort of a cognitive dual task. And that's Matt Ryan featured there watching game footage of the Atlanta Falcons. So there's motor skills that you can do that are specific to the sport, just general physical skills like Aaron Cook is doing, the tactical skills that Matt Ryan are doing, and then there are combined skills which are really the the full suite of everything, which are neurophysical. So this is where you have an integrated program that causes the user themselves to move with the screen. So the Microsoft Kinect is something developed by Xbox for purposes like this, and we've integrated that with our software such that you can create an environment that's absolutely dynamic from the digital perspective, while also nothing impeding you from incorporating that physical or dual task that you can see in slide 2. From a business perspective, we do offer a great deal of sales and marketing support. So we've got turnkey solutions and marketing materials that you're able to use to promote and generate sales. This is something obviously very useful for anyone who's using this as a tool to extend client services. So happy to be able to share that as well. We do offer co-branded banners to promote businesses. As you can see here, these are just small examples of what it is that we can do to help you raise awareness that you're working with our system. And there's a centralized video library as well. So there's a great deal of opportunity for you to leverage our existing marketing materials and content so that you can deliver a more robust explanation of what it is that they'll be doing with our program. We've got downloadable brochures. You're able to promote ourselves on our NT blog, and you're able to connect with our community of influencers. You'll just have to send an email to marketing@neurotracker.net and they'll take care of you. I'd like now to go to an introduction phase, whereby I'll be talking a little bit about the speakers that will be talking later on in the presentation. So Dr. Keith Smithson, he is working at the Visual Performance for the Washington Nationals, the team of optometrists for the Washington Wizards, the Spirits, the Mystics, and DC United. He's a sports vision consultant for the Washington Redskins and Capitals as well. Dr. Smithson really is a pioneer in the field of sports vision, and he's an absolute external champion for us, and really will, I think, bring home a lot of the core concepts that I've talked about today. So, you know, the quote here is sports performance plays a role for NeuroTracker and is already well known, and we've made great strides applying in the training of NBA, NFL, MLS, and MLB athletes. So what's less well known is the application of NeuroTracker for therapy. We treat a very wide array of range of patients suffering from concussion and TBI. Our next speaker will be Maxime Chevrier, who is a bit of a local hero for us here in Montreal, Canada. A quote from him here: when you ask, you know, what is your average client's goal? Most of the clients are here to improve their cognitive performance. I'm using the NeuroTracker to train their brain, basically. It can be athletes, but it can also be anyone who wants to improve their attention, their focus, or to lower anxiety. So Maxime Chevrier is the owner of Synapse Plus. He's a sports psychology consultant, and he will as well be making a presentation a little bit later. Dr. Michel Dupuis, another one of our key opinion leaders. He's a clinical director of New Life Integrative Health Center in New Liskeard, Ontario, oftentimes referred to as the proactive doctor. He is one of the most sought after health experts in the world, and his practice is centered on helping people regain their health using natural methods. So one of the leading authorities on health and lectures nationally, internationally, to both the public as well as doctors on this and many other topics. So he as well will be making a presentation this afternoon. And now a little bit more about the platforms. So NeuroTracker is essentially available in two ways. You have an on-site system that uses a 3D TV or projector to deliver our highest quality training, or as a remote platform that uses personal computer to deliver portable training. The simplest sort of analogy for this is you have an on-site system, which is very much like going to the movie theater, and we have an at-home system, which is, you know, your Netflix. You've got a way to stream the service from anywhere with a wireless connection, or if you're going to an on-site environment, you're going to get a little bit more of an immersive experience. But a great combination is using both of these things, whereby you engage your client in the on-site environment, and then you assign what we call cognitive homework to them with our remote product. So what you're able to do in terms of using this system is you know, leveraging the science and the technology. You're able to use our KOL and networks, identify unmet needs in your market. We can customize NeuroTracker programs for your clients. And what we're going to be doing is emailing out this webinar links, the recording to other people that you can showcase and share. There's a sales resource folder that we will be sharing, and we'll be able to follow up with particular clients to develop marketing plans for them. The real value in terms of what it is that we deliver is that we're evidence-based and we're research-oriented. So I encourage everyone to read the research and educate themselves if they're going to be delivering this to their clients, because that really is where the value comes from. So I want to say thank you for everyone who's been in attendance today and have put up with my rambling. This is now going to be turned over to Christina to introduce our KOLs for their presentations. I welcome a Q&A session perhaps at the end, actually, of the webinar. Thank you for your time. Christina?
Thank you so much, Louis. That was fantastic. I'm going to start off with Maxime Chevrier. If you want to go first. Maxime, if you just want to, you can unmute your line. There we go. Perfect.
Hi. So thanks, Louis. It was really good. I'm a sports psychologist. I've been working in sports psychology for the past 12 years, basically. I was working also with a lot of clients and athletes with ADHD, and this is how I started to use NeuroTracker. So before that, I was using other tools, and most of my clients were happy in my office, but they were not as happy, let's say, in class or on the field. So I started to use NeuroTracker, and yes, I work a lot with athletes, but like I said, I'm working with ADHD, a lot with concussion management, also with seniors and stroke. I did my PhD on chronic pain, and I'm using it also for the past 2-3 years with the clientele who suffer from chronic pain. I also have some really good benefits, so that's something I'm really proud of. something that's really important for me is that it's not the holy grail. So yes, there's a lot of things that a lot of people can benefit from NeuroTracker, but at the same time, there's other stuff we need to do along the road. The main thing with NeuroTracker, like I'm saying to my clients, is that it helps improving attention, awareness, of course, focus, attention, all these things. But what I like a lot is that we do that by working with vision and the vestibular system, which is something that only NeuroTracker or almost only NeuroTracker does. So that's really, really important for me. And that's the main point, because with most cognitive tests that we can do, or I can do in my office, I work only one thing at a time, let's say memory, working memory or attention, whereas NeuroTracker integrates all these things all at once. And this is how I see all the benefits on the field or in class for my clients. And a lot of my clients are telling me that since they're doing NeuroTracker, maybe after 20, 25, 30 sessions, they lower sometimes the medication, or some parents don't always like Ritalin or their other medication, and they see some really good effect with NeuroTracker without any side effect, which is also really, really important. I'm not against medication, but I feel that NeuroTracker can help a lot also for attention, which is really, really good. And like we mentioned earlier, it really works on executive function, and that's the main key for anyone. So athletes, but also students or seniors, VP, everyone are using their executive function. So that's really important. So basically, this is how I'm using it. It's been a few years now, maybe a bit more than 6 years I'm using it. I would say maybe 90% of my clientele now are using NeuroTracker with me, mostly in my office, but also remotely at home. And I saw a lot of improvement. And most of them, after maybe 25, 30 sessions, they have the benefits they wanted to have. So they're stopping using NeuroTracker on a daily basis, and they do it maybe once a year, twice a year, just to make sure they keep the same baseline. But most of the time, they improve it mostly because of FAR transfer. So that's something we're proud of. So basically, it's that for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Maxime. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Michel Dupuis.
Hello, sorry, there's no picture. The camera's not working on my computer. So I use NeuroTracker for a whole lot of different reasons. The first thing, when I was introduced to it, the first thing that I did is I developed a talk for Alzheimer's. So of course I presented that talk, and then after I went over NeuroTracker, and then I asked people to come in for report of findings. So at the report of findings, I got them set up with NeuroTracker, and then they would go home and they use NeuroTracker. Some of them still use it today. I still have a lady in England that is still using NeuroTracker. She's actually a medical professor at a university. So she still uses NeuroTracker on a regular basis. I also developed a lot of different talks. So I do a lot of presentations. And so I'll do it for aging, 100-year lifestyle, all those kind of things that I will always do let's say a back-end marketing for NeuroTracker as something that they can do to improve brain function, because that's one of the most important things that we have, especially in chiropractic. Chiropractic, we always talk about the nervous system, so this is one of the key aspects for making sure that your brain is functioning properly. So I also do a lot of brain-based postural and neurological assessments. So if I see that somebody does have some sort of postural deficit, and especially if it's like a midbrain or a pons issue, so we'll check cranial nerve 3, see if it's functioning properly. If I see a weakness there, that's more of a visual acuity issue or visual issue, where they're not actually, they're not that we're looking for a 20/20 vision, but we're looking to see if they can actually receive information from what they're looking at. And if they can't, then their posture is actually going to be affected, and we can see that. Then I prescribe, or I get them to go home, and one of the exercises that they do is NeuroTracker. So there's a lot of different ways that I use NeuroTracker in my clinic. Like I said, the biggest things are for Alzheimer's, postural dysfunctions, people that just want general wellness. It's one of those things. If somebody comes in and they ask me, what do I need to do to stay well? It's going to be, well, you want to make sure that you maintain proper brain function. So this is what you can do, and then I just get them set up. They'll come in just like they said. I'll usually do the assessment on my computer, and then we'll send them home with the tools, and they just use this at home. I get them to do it first thing, as soon as they wake up in the morning, within 20 minutes, I want them doing NeuroTracker, especially because of the awakening cycle. So you always have that awakening cycle when you wake up. Within 20 minutes, your brain really starts to wake up. So I want them doing that within that 20 minutes. Then go do some exercise, and it just really gets that brain functioning well. So that's how I use NeuroTracker. I think that's pretty much it. What I do hear from patients is, yes, at first, as you saw in the presentation, is, you know, they're having a difficult time at 1.4, but all of a sudden, within about a month or so, they're like at 2.8, they're at 3, and they're going, you know, they just see things more clear. Just like today, for example, I knew I was doing this presentation, so I'm leaving my clinic, and I have to drive through a parking lot. About 5 seconds before it occurred, I saw this white car coming from a row of cars. So the cars were blocking it. I saw the car way before it almost hit me. So I stopped before the car pulled out of the row of cars. If I wouldn't have saw that car, it would have nailed me. But I saw it not 5 seconds, but split seconds before it actually occurred. And it's funny because I was thinking at the same time, okay, I got to go home, got to do the presentation. And actually, it's very, like I said, it's kind of interesting how that occurred. And I'm thinking, man, if it wasn't for NeuroTracker, I would have got nailed because I wouldn't have stopped. I was stopped, and she just looked at me like, how did you even see me? She had that look on her face like, whoops, you know, and I'm stopped. I'm just looking at her going, no, it's okay. Not a problem. I saw you. But if I wouldn't have saw her, yeah, I would have been nailed for sure. So it was pretty cool how this actually can improve your peripheral vision, cognitive function. And as a practitioner, I mean, I think if you're prescribing this, you should be using it. I use it every morning. Every morning I use this tool, you know, within the first 20 minutes, like I said, to get that awakening cycle really cycled, really revved up for the day. And in the afternoon, I'll do it occasionally. If I'm getting kind of tired and I'm in between patients, and you know, you got a tough patient coming in, you want to make sure that they have 1,000 questions, you know, that type of patient. I go in, and if I got a couple minutes, I'll use this just to get my brain moving again. And you go in, and yeah, you have less anxiety, you know, you just feel a lot better, your brain's functioning. You know, it's a great tool to have, to use, and to be able to prescribe it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dupuis, for that. I have Dr. Keith Smithson on my phone. Unfortunately, he's joining by phone, so that's why I wasn't able to add him as a panelist. So he's going to go ahead, and hopefully you guys can hear him.
Hello. How are you? Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so thank you for having me. Yes, yeah, NeuroTracker for me has been an integral part of our practice. We use it literally every single day. I've been working with the system for probably 5 years at this point, and use it primarily in the areas of sports and performance vision for athletes of all ages, as well as military, law enforcement professionals, first responders, that sort of thing, as well as post-concussion and TBI rehabilitation. So it has multiple applications for us in our practice. I would also say that we use, you know, sort of all facets of NeuroTracker, in that we have one of my clinics that has a large standalone unit with more free space applications and possibilities, where we can add a lot more of the divided attention tasks and protocols involved there. We also have one of my 5 offices that has a smaller footprint, so that we have a sit-down 3D head-mounted device where they can continue to do NeuroTracker in our clinical setting, but in a smaller footprint format. And we also use the online NeuroTracker capability for athletes or patients to use remote training when they're sort of away from our office. It's kind of their NeuroTracker homework, so to speak. So we use all facets of the training program, and it's been an absolutely incredible part of our protocols and what we've done day to day, week to week with patients. And I think it's been amazing. I mean, it really has. We've seen incredible benefits. It's absolutely quantifiable, which is amazing. So being able to quantify things like reaction times and processing speed, and looking at things that we can objectively quantify, I think helps us to stand apart in the clinical standpoint of that. This is not something that's not quantifiable. So the numbers, the numerical part of it is great, but the athletic performance speaks for itself. And I think the transference studies we talked about earlier are a great way to relate that to teams, trainers, or coaches that we may be talking with. But having the athletes or the individuals working through this program, seeing results on the field or on the court or on the ice, makes a difference, and it really does. And I think it does make a difference for them. They see it, they notice it, they come back to us religiously. We've worked with some of the best athletes in the world. We're carrying around a big shiny cup down here in Washington, D.C., thanks to last year's Stanley Cup champion Washington Capitals. So it's been an incredible opportunity to work with incredible athletes and see a technology that really helps them to be better and to the points we made earlier, help them to stay safe from an injury prevention standpoint, and when need be, help rehabilitate from a concussion standpoint. So that's been sort of our overview of the use of NeuroTracker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smithson, for that. Great. Okay, so thank you guys, everybody, for your time. I'm going to stop the recording now. Again, we will be able to send this out to you. If anybody has any questions, you can send an email over to Louis, and we will be happy to get back to you. Again, thank you all for listening and for your time today.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for our panelists and speakers.
Yes, thank you very much.